15 years ago, as the sky burned and death loomed over 8,000 stranded souls, an alien ship ignored orders, broke sacred laws, and saved humanity. They asked for nothing. They vanished into the stars, forgotten by the galaxy, but not by us. Now their worlds are burning. Their pleas echo through silence. The great powers turn away. But humanity remembers, because when you save a Death Worlder, you don't earn thanks. You earn an unbreakable debt, and now we pay it with fire, steel, and the fury of 1,000 engines. This is the story of a promise kept, and a galaxy forever changed. When the sky burned, the emergency alarm screamed through every corridor of the colony ship New Dawn as it plummeted toward the surface of Kepler 442b. Captain Zara Thorne gripped the command chair with white knuckles, watching the atmospheric readings spiral into critical ranges. The ship's hull groaned under stresses it was never designed to handle. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, shouted Lieutenant Commander James Park from his position at the damage control station. "We're losing atmosphere fast, Captain." The journey from Earth had taken 8 years in cryosleep, carrying 8,000 colonists to what was supposed to be humanity's new home. The planet looked perfect from their initial scans. Breathable atmosphere, abundant water, fertile soil. But something had gone terribly wrong during their final approach. Marcus Chen, a young engineer barely out of the academy, felt his stomach lurch as another section of the ship's hull buckled. At only 25 years old, he was the youngest senior engineer in the fleet, but his quick thinking had already saved dozens of lives during the crisis. He worked frantically at his console, trying to reroute power to the failing life support systems. "Captain, the main reactor is overheating," Marcus called out, sweat beading on his forehead. "If we don't shut it down in the next 10 minutes, we'll have a complete meltdown. But if we do shut it down, we lose life support for the entire ship." Captain Thorne was a veteran of 3 colonial missions, but she had never faced anything like this. She was 52 years old, with gray streaking through her brown hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent making impossible decisions. Today would add a few more. "How long can we survive on emergency power?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. "Maybe 6 hours, Captain," Marcus replied, his voice tight with stress. "The atmospheric processors are already failing. We have maybe 3 hours before the air becomes toxic." The ship hit the planet's surface with a grinding crash that threw everyone to the deck. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main systems died one by one. In the sudden quiet that followed, the only sounds were the groaning of twisted metal and the desperate gasps of 8,000 people who had just realized they might die on a world they had never seen. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, was already moving through the corridors with her medical teams. She was a small woman with fierce determination, and she had sworn an oath to preserve life, no matter the cost. Her voice echoed through the ship's communication system as she organized triage centers for the injured. "All medical personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple casualties and limited time. Remember your training, people. We save who we can." Captain Thorne stood in the wreckage of her bridge, looking through the cracked viewports at the alien landscape outside. The planet was beautiful. Rolling hills covered in purple vegetation under a pale orange sky. It would be their grave unless they could find a miracle. "Engineering teams, report to the reactor room," she announced over the ship's failing communication system. "We need to know our options. All department heads to the bridge in 10 minutes. Marcus Chen was already suiting up for a dangerous journey into the ship's damaged reactor compartment. The radiation levels were climbing, but someone had to assess the damage. He had volunteered because he was young and unmarried, with no family depending on him. It seemed like the right thing to do. As he made his way through the twisted corridors, stepping over debris and helping injured colonists, Marcus thought about the promise he had made to his grandmother before leaving Earth. She had taken his hands in her old, weathered ones and made him swear to always remember kindness when he saw it, and to repay it whenever possible. "The universe has a way of keeping score, Marcus," she had said. "Good deeds don't disappear. They come back when you need them most." At the time, he had thought it was just the rambling of an old woman. Now, surrounded by dying machinery and terrified people, he wished he could believe in such simple wisdom. The reactor room was a nightmare of sparking cables and radioactive steam. Marcus worked quickly, his radiation detector clicking ominously as he documented the damage. The news was worse than he had feared. The reactor was beyond repair with their current resources, and the backup systems were failing one by one. He was about to return to the bridge with his grim report when something caught his eye through one of the small portholes. A light in the sky, moving against the natural patterns of the planet's 3 moons. It was definitely artificial, and it was getting brighter. "Captain," Marcus called over his communicator, his voice filled with sudden hope. "There's a ship approaching our position. It's not one of ours." On the bridge, Captain Thorne felt her heart skip a beat. First contact with an alien species was supposed to happen under controlled conditions, with diplomats and scientists and careful protocols, not in the wreckage of a dying colony ship with 8,000 desperate people aboard. "Can you determine their intentions?" she asked, though she knew there was no way to know. The alien ship was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. It moved through the atmosphere like a living thing, its hull shifting and flowing in patterns that seemed almost organic. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The ship settled onto the planet's surface near the crash site with barely a whisper of displaced air. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then a section of the alien hull simply melted away, revealing an opening that glowed with soft, blue light. The beings that emerged were tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer like water in moonlight. They moved with a fluid motion that reminded the humans of dancers, and their large, dark eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. Captain Vex High was the commander of the Zalani rescue vessel Gentle Whisper. He was ancient by his people's standards, having lived for over 3 centuries, but his mind was still sharp and his compassion had only grown deeper with age. He had been monitoring the space lanes when their sensors detected the human ship's distress. The Zalani had a strict policy of non-interference with primitive species. Their society had learned through bitter experience that helping younger civilizations often led to dependency and conflict. But Vex High looked at the wreckage of the human ship and saw 8,000 beings who would die without help. He made the decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Prepare the emergency life support modules," he commanded his crew in their musical language. "These beings require our assistance." His second-in-command, a younger Zalani named Kefral, hesitated. "Captain, the Council of Wisdom has forbidden such interventions. If we help them, we risk our own ship and violate our most sacred laws." Vexahai looked at the young officer with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "Some laws are worth breaking when the alternative is watching innocents die. We will face the consequences later." The first contact between humans and Zalani took place in the twisted wreckage of the New Dawn's main corridor. Captain Thorne, accompanied by Marcus Chen and Dr. Martinez, met Captain Vex High near the ship's failing life support center. The language barrier was overcome through the Zalani's advanced translation technology, but the emotional barrier dissolved the moment Vex High saw the human children who were already showing signs of oxygen deprivation. "Your people are dying," Vex High said simply, his translated words carrying a weight of sorrow. "We can help, but it will cost us greatly." Captain Thorne felt tears streaming down her face. "Why would you help us? You don't even know who we are." Vex High touched one of the failing atmospheric processors with a long, graceful finger. "Because you are alive, and life is precious. No other reason is needed." The Zalani worked for 18 hours straight, using their advanced technology to repair the human ship's life support systems. They had to cannibalize their own ship's power cores, leaving the Gentle Whisper barely functional. Their own crew would be stranded on this world until another Zalani ship could find them, which might take years. Marcus Chen worked alongside a Zalani engineer named Thel Voss, learning more about advanced technology in one day than he had in 4 years of academy training. The alien was patient and kind, explaining complex concepts through their universal translator. "Your people have great potential," Thelvas told him as they installed the final power coupling. "You think in ways that surprise us. Perhaps one day, when you have traveled further among the stars, we will meet again as equals." "I hope so," Marcus replied. "I want to learn everything you can teach us, and someday, I hope we can help you the way you've helped us." Thelvas made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Such optimism in one so young. Hold on to that, Marcus Chen. The galaxy needs more beings who believe in the possibility of kindness." As the life support systems came back online and clean air began flowing through the ship again, the human colonists gathered to thank their saviors. 8,000 people filled every available corridor and viewing deck, their faces reflecting gratitude that transcended species barriers. Captain Vex High stood before them, his tall form graceful even in the awkward confines of the human ship. "We ask for no payment and seek no reward," he said, his words carrying to every person aboard. "Help others when you can. That is payment enough." Young Marcus Chen pushed forward through the crowd, carrying something he had made during the long hours of repair work. It was a simple data crystal containing detailed recordings of human music, art, literature, and history. Everything beautiful about his species compiled as a gift. "This is for you," Marcus said, placing the crystal in Vex High's elongated hands. "So you'll remember us. And I promise you this. If your people ever need help, if you're ever in danger, we will come. No matter how far we have to travel, no matter how long it takes, humans don't forget those who help us." Vex High accepted the crystal with the solemnity of a sacred trust. "I believe you, young Marcus. Your species has a strength that goes beyond your technology. You have hearts that remember." The gentle whisper limped away from Kepler 442b 3 days later, its hull barely holding together, its crew facing an uncertain journey home. The humans watched it disappear into the star-filled sky, knowing they owed their lives to beings they had known for less than a week. Captain Thorne ordered that the story of the Zilani rescue be recorded in the colony's official history and taught to every child born on their new world. A monument was built at the crash site, with Vex High's words carved in both human and Zilani script. "Help others when you can. That is payment enough." Marcus Chen became the chief engineer of the growing colony, but he never stopped working on long-range sensors and communication arrays. Every day he scanned the stars, hoping to hear news of the Zilani people who had saved them all. 15 years passed. The colony of New Haven grew into a thriving world with cities and spaceports and universities. Children who had been born on the crashed ship were now adults with children of their own. But the story of the Zilani was told and retold, becoming the foundation myth of their new civilization. And Marcus Chen, now older and wiser but no less determined, continued his watch among the stars. He had made a promise to a being of another species, and he intended to keep it. He did not know that the galaxy was about to put that promise to the test. The call across the void. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck of New Haven's primary communications array, watching the stars through the reinforced transparasteel windows. At 40 years old, his hair was beginning to show silver at the temples, but his eyes still held the same determined fire that had driven him to work alongside alien rescuers 15 years ago. The communication center behind him hummed with activity as dozens of technicians monitored signals from across the galaxy. Marcus had spent the last decade building the most advanced listening post in human space, driven by a promise he had made to a being whose people had saved 8,000 human lives. "Sir, we're picking up something unusual on the deep space frequencies," called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her monitoring station. She was young, barely 25, but she had inherited Marcus's passion for reaching across the void between stars. Marcus turned from the window and walked to her console, his practiced eye scanning the scrolling data streams. What he saw made his blood run cold. The signal was weak and fragmented, transmitted on Zilani frequencies that he had memorized years ago. "Clean it up and boost the signal," he ordered, his voice tight with sudden urgency. "I need to hear every word." The static cleared slowly, revealing a desperate voice speaking in the musical language of the Zilani. Marcus's translation software, perfected through years of studying the cultural database Vex High had shared, converted the alien words into stark human phrases. "This is Commander Yelthara of the Zilani Defense Council, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Our worlds are under attack by the Hegemony Empire. They are systematically destroying our cities and enslaving our people to mine the sacred crystals of our homeworld. We have sent distress calls to every major power in the galaxy. No one will help us. The hegemony is too powerful, too well connected. Our children are dying. Our ancient cities are burning. If anyone receives this message, if anyone remembers the Zilani as friends, please." The signal dissolved into static, but Marcus had heard enough. His hands shook as he reached for the communication console, his mind racing through the implications. The Zilani, who had risked everything to save human strangers, were facing extinction while the galaxy turned away. "Lieutenant Kim, I need you to contact Admiral Sarah Cross immediately," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of 15 years of leadership. "Tell her it's priority alpha. The dead is being called in." Admiral Sarah Cross had been Captain Sarah Martinez, the young medical officer who had organized triage centers in the wreckage of the New Dawn. She had joined the Colonial Defense Force after the rescue, driven by a desire to protect the people the Zilani had saved. Now she commanded humanity's small but advanced fleet from the bridge of the battleship Remembrance. She was in her ready room, reviewing patrol reports from the outer colonies when Marcus's urgent message arrived. The words hit her like a physical blow. She had been there 15 years ago. She had seen Captain Vexhai sacrifice his own ship to save human lives. She had watched children breathe clean air again because aliens had chosen compassion over profit. All department heads to the briefing room immediately, she announced over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. The briefing room filled quickly with the core officers of the human colonial fleet. Captain David Torres of the heavy cruiser Defiance, a stern man whose family had been aboard the New Dawn. Commander Lisa Park, the brilliant tactical officer whose innovations had helped humanity build ships that could compete with older galactic powers. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the xenobiologist who had spent her career studying Zelani technology and culture. Admiral Cross stood at the head of the conference table, her uniform bearing the crossed star insignia of New Haven Defense Command. Behind her, a holographic display showed the positions of human and Zelani worlds scattered across hundreds of light years. 15 years ago, the Zelani saved every life in this room, she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. Today, they're facing extinction, and we're the only ones who can help them. She activated the display, showing intelligence reports that had been filtering in through civilian channels. The Hegemony Empire was a vast military-industrial complex that controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy's trade routes. They were known for aggressive expansion and brutal suppression of resistance. The Hegemony has been systematically attacking Zelani worlds for the past 6 months, Admiral Cross continued. They want the quantum crystals that grow naturally in Zelani oceans. These crystals are the foundation of their advanced technology, but they're also sacred to the Zelani people. Captain Torres leaned forward, studying the tactical data with a grim expression. Admiral, with respect, we have 12 ships. The Hegemony has over 3,000. This isn't a military operation, it's suicide. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are, Dr. Vasquez interrupted, her voice sharp with determination. I've been studying Zelani technology for 15 years. They gave us gifts we're only beginning to understand. If we can adapt their quantum harmonics to our shield systems. Commander Park was already running calculations on her tactical computer. It's possible, but we'd need to integrate alien technology into our entire fleet. The engineering challenges alone would take months. Admiral Cross looked around the table at faces she had known for years, people who had survived because of alien kindness. We don't have months. Marcus's long-range sensors indicate that the Hegemony is massing for a final assault on the Zelani homeworld. If we're going to act, it has to be now. What about the other powers? Captain Torres asked. The Galactic Trade Federation, the Draconian Council, the Core Worlds Alliance? Surely someone else will intervene. Dr. Vasquez shook her head sadly. I've been monitoring diplomatic channels. The major powers are either allied with the Hegemony or too afraid to challenge them. The Zelani have always been isolationists. They never built the political alliances that might have protected them. The room fell silent as the officers contemplated the impossible odds they faced. 12 human ships against the might of a galactic empire. It should have been laughable, but no one was laughing. Admiral Cross touched a control on the conference table, and the display changed to show the monument that stood at the crash site of the New Dawn. Vexhai's words were clearly visible, carved in stone that would last for millennia. Help others when you can, that is payment enough. Marcus Chen made a promise that day, she said quietly. He told Captain Vexhai that humans would come if the Zelani ever needed help. Every person in this room owes their life to that promise being made. The question is, are we the kind of people who keep our word? Captain Torres was the first to speak. The Defiance is ready for departure, Admiral. My crew won't hesitate to follow the Zelani into hell itself. Commander Park nodded grimly. Give me 48 hours to install the quantum harmonic modifications. It's not enough time to do it properly, but it's enough time to do it. Dr. Vasquez was already pulling up technical specifications on her portable computer. I'll need to brief every engineering team on Zelani quantum theory. They're going to think I'm crazy, but the math works. Admiral Cross felt a familiar warmth in her chest, the same feeling she had experienced as a young medical officer watching aliens risk everything to save strangers. Then we're committed. Send word to every human colony, every merchant ship, every independent trader. The debt is being called in. The response from human space was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, ships were converging on New Haven from every corner of human territory. Not military vessels, but converted freighters, research ships, even civilian transports whose captains refused to be left behind. Captain Elena Rodriguez arrived from the mining colonies with a squadron of heavy cargo haulers equipped with industrial-grade cutting lasers. We may not be warships, she told Admiral Cross over the communication link, but we know how to tear things apart. The scientific research vessel Curiosity, commanded by Dr. James Wright, brought advanced sensor arrays and experimental weapon systems. The Zilani shared their knowledge with us, Dr. Wright explained. It's time to show them what humans can do with that knowledge. Even more surprising were the messages from alien species throughout the galaxy. The Anthari Collective, a peaceful trading confederation, sent word that their medical ships would provide support. The Keth warrior clans, traditional enemies of the hegemony, offered to share intelligence about enemy fleet movements. I don't understand, Commander Park said as she reviewed the incoming messages. These species have no connection to the Zilani. Why are they willing to risk hegemony retaliation? Dr. Vasquez smiled as she read through historical databases. Because the Zilani have been helping people for centuries, they just never talked about it. Medical aid during plagues, rescue operations in deep space, technological assistance for struggling colonies. The Zilani have been quietly saving lives across the galaxy for longer than any of us realized. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching the impossible fleet assembling around New Haven. 47 ships from a dozen different species united by the simple idea that kindness should be repaid. It was still nowhere near enough to challenge the hegemony's massive fleet, but it was a start. All ships, this is Admiral Cross, she announced over the fleet communication network. 15 years ago, the Zilani saved 8,000 human lives because it was the right thing to do. Today, we're going to return that favor. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and probably outmatched. But we have something the hegemony doesn't understand. We remember who helped us when we needed it most. Marcus Chen stood in the communication center on New Haven, watching the fleet prepare to depart. At his console, he composed a message using the Zilani communication protocols he had studied for so many years. Captain Vex High, if you can hear this, we're coming. A human named Marcus Chen made you a promise 15 years ago, and we're going to keep it. Help is on the way. As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, beginning the long journey to Zilani territory, Marcus allowed himself to hope. They had kept their promise to try. Whether they would succeed was another question entirely. In the depths of space, the hegemony war machine continued its relentless advance toward the Zilani homeworld. Admiral Krexstar, the ruthless hegemony commander, had no idea that a small fleet of humans and their allies was racing across the galaxy to challenge his empire. He was about to learn that some debts are paid in full, regardless of the cost. The galaxy was about to discover that human gratitude, once awakened, could indeed shake worlds. The galaxy remembers. The Zilani homeworld of Thalandros hung like a jewel in the void, its vast oceans reflecting the light of twin suns. But the beauty was marred by the ugly scars of war. Orbital bombardment had left craters along the coastlines, and the graceful spire cities that had stood for millennia were burning. Captain Vex High stood in the ruins of the Grand Assembly, his once shimmering skin now dulled by age and sorrow. At over 300 years old, he had never expected to see his people's civilization destroyed in his lifetime. The quantum crystal gardens that had been tended for thousands of years were being strip-mined by hegemony machines. The final evacuation ships are ready, Captain, reported Commander Yelthara, her voice heavy with defeat. We can save perhaps 50,000 of our people, but the rest. Vex High touched the small data crystal he still carried after all these years. The gift from a young human engineer who had promised that his people would come if needed. It seemed like a beautiful dream now, faced with the reality of hegemony warships filling the sky. Continue the evacuation, he said quietly. Every life saved honors those we cannot save. High above the planet, Admiral Krexstar of the Hegemony 4th Fleet stood on the bridge of his massive dreadnought, the Iron Dominion. He was a Vorthan, a species known for their ruthless efficiency and complete lack of empathy. His scaled hide was marked with the ritual scars of conquest, each one representing a world that had fallen to his fleets. Status report on the crystal mining operation, he demanded of his tactical officer. Proceeding ahead of schedule, Admiral. Our preliminary estimates were conservative. This world contains enough quantum crystals to power our entire fleet for a century. Krexstar smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. And the Zilani resistance? Minimal, sir. Their few remaining defense platforms will be eliminated within the hour. The species will be extinct before the Galactic Standard Day ends. The Admiral nodded with satisfaction. The Zilani had made the mistake of refusing to surrender their sacred crystals voluntarily. Now they would serve as an example to other worlds that might consider defying the hegemony's will. That was when the impossible happened. Admiral, we're detecting hyperspace emergence signatures at the edge of the system, reported the sensor officer, his voice confused. Multiple contacts, unknown configuration. Krexstar frowned. No major power had the courage to challenge the hegemony directly. Display on the main screen. The tactical display showed dozens of ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were not the sleek vessels of the core worlds or the angular designs of the Draconian fleet. These ships looked almost primitive, with hulls that seemed cobbled together from different technologies. Human ships, Admiral, the intelligence officer reported after running the configurations through their database. 47 vessels total, led by what appears to be a modified colony defense battleship. Krextar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Humans? The primitive upstarts who barely qualify for galactic civilization status? This must be some kind of joke. Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. The message is addressed to the Zilani population. Put it through, Krextar ordered. He was curious to hear what these foolish humans thought they could accomplish. Admiral Sarah Cross's voice filled the communication channels, speaking in heavily accented but understandable Zilani. People of Thalandros, this is Admiral Cross of the Human Colonial Defense Force. 15 years ago, your people saved 8,000 human lives when our colony ship crashed on Kepler 442b. You asked for nothing in return except that we help others when we could. Today, we're here to keep that promise. Captain Vex High, now aboard a Zilani refugee ship, watched the battle with wonder. The young species that his people had saved was coordinating a multi-species alliance to save them in return. The humans had not only kept their promise, they had inspired others to remember their own debts of gratitude. Mark, Admiral Cross commanded. The combined fleet focused their fire on the central mining platform, while Marcus Chen and his team sent carefully modulated energy pulses through the quantum crystal network. The feedback effect was immediate and catastrophic. Every piece of hegemony mining equipment on the planet overloaded simultaneously, creating a chain reaction that disabled the orbital bombardment platforms. Admiral Krextar watched his invasion force crumble as systems failed across his entire fleet. How is this possible? They're using our own mining operation against us. The Iron Dominion shuddered as its own quantum crystal power core began to overload. Krextar realized with growing panic that his massive dreadnought was about to become a very expensive piece of space debris. All ships, immediate retreat, he ordered. Fall back to hegemony space. But the Alliance fleet was not finished. As the hegemony forces fled, Admiral Cross opened a channel to the entire galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Cross of the Human Colonial Defense Force, speaking for the Alliance of Remembered Debts. Today we have shown that kindness is not weakness, and that those who help others are never truly alone. Any civilization that preys upon the innocent will face the combined wrath of every species that remembers what it means to be grateful. The Battle of Thalandros became a turning point in galactic history. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility was shattered, and their empire began to crumble as subjugated worlds rose in rebellion. The Alliance of Remembered Debts evolved into a new form of galactic government based on mutual aid rather than conquest. Captain Vex High stood once again in the Grand Assembly, now rebuilt with technology donated by dozens of species. At his side was Marcus Chen, now an old man but still driven by the same passion for exploration and understanding that had motivated him as a young engineer. Your people have grown far beyond what I imagined possible, Vex High told him as they watched young beings from multiple species learning together in the rebuilt halls. Marcus smiled, holding his own grandchild, a little girl who would grow up in a galaxy where kindness was valued above conquest. We learned from the best teachers. You showed us that helping others isn't just the right thing to do, it's the foundation of true civilization. The Covenant of Remembrance, established in the wake of the battle, created a new galactic order where the strong protected the weak and debts of gratitude were honored across generations. Young beings from every member species learned the story of the Zilani rescue and the human promise, understanding that kindness freely given would always find its way back when needed most. In the years that followed, humanity took its place not as conquerors, but as coordinators, using their talent for bringing diverse groups together to maintain the alliance. The galaxy learned that humans possessed a unique gift, the ability to see potential in others and to remember acts of kindness long after they were forgotten by those who gave them. And in the quantum crystal gardens of Thalandros, now protected by ships from 100 different worlds, children of many species played together under alien suns, learning that the universe was vast and sometimes dangerous, but never empty of hope for those who chose compassion over cruelty. The debt had been repaid, but the lesson endured. In a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, those who help others will never face the darkness alone. On the surface of Thalandros, Vex-High felt his heart skip a beat. The young human Marcus had kept his word. Against all odds, against all logic, the humans had come. All Zilani ships, this is the human fleet, Admiral Cross continued. Take your people to safety. We'll hold the line. Krextar's amusement turned to rage. All ships, target the human fleet. Destroy them immediately. Make an example that will be remembered across the galaxy. The battle that followed would indeed be remembered across the galaxy, but not in the way Admiral Krextar intended. The human ships moved with a fluidity that shocked the hegemony tacticians. Their vessels flowed around enemy fire like schools of fish, their formations shifting and adapting in patterns that seemed almost organic. Dr. Vasquez's integration of Zilani quantum harmonics had given them capabilities that no one had seen before. The battleship Remembrance led the human charge, its modified shields shimmering with quantum energy that deflected hegemony plasma bolts like raindrops. Admiral Cross stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of someone who had long ago decided that some things were worth dying for. All ships, pattern Omega, she commanded. Show them what humans learned from the Zilani. Captain Torres's heavy cruiser Defiance executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship of its size, sliding between two hegemony destroyers and unleashing a barrage that crippled both vessels. The Zilani had taught humans about harmony and flow, and now those lessons were being applied to combat with devastating effect. But the human fleet was still vastly outnumbered. For every hegemony ship they destroyed, two more took its place. Admiral Cross watched her formation taking damage, her people dying to buy time for Zilani evacuation ships. Admiral, we're detecting new hyperspace signatures, reported Commander Park. Multiple fleets approaching from several vectors. Cross expected to see hegemony reinforcements arriving to finish them off. Instead, the tactical display filled with ships from dozens of different species. Anthari medical vessels, Keth warrior clans, Saurian research ships, even the mysterious Void Walkers who rarely left their deep space territories. This is Commander Thelkas of the Anthari Collective, came a transmission in perfectly clear galactic standard. The Zilani saved our people during the plague of Morthron. We stand with them now. Keth clan Bloodfire reporting for battle, growled another voice. The Water Singers once pulled our cubs from a dying ship. Today we repay the debt. Ship after ship announced their arrival, each with their own story of Zilani kindness. The mysterious aliens who had quietly helped civilizations across the galaxy for centuries had finally called in their debts all at once. Admiral Krextar watched in disbelief as his overwhelming numerical advantage disappeared. Where are all these ships coming from? Our intelligence indicated that the Zilani had no military alliances. His intelligence officer was frantically checking databases. Sir, it appears that the Zilani have been providing humanitarian aid across the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Medical assistance, rescue operations, technological support for struggling colonies. They never asked for formal alliances or payment. And now they're all here, Krextar said, his voice filled with dawning horror. The battle shifted dramatically as the Alliance fleet coordinated their attack. Human ingenuity combined with Anthari medical technology to create field hospitals that could treat wounded from any species. Keth warrior ferocity paired with Zilani harmony to execute battle strategies that confused and overwhelmed hegemony forces. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working from her laboratory ship, made a discovery that changed everything. Admiral Cross, I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from the Zilani crystals. They're not just power sources, they're communication networks. The crystals on every Zilani world are connected at a quantum level. What does that mean for us? Cross asked, even as her ship shook under enemy fire. It means we can turn the hegemony's own mining operation against them. If we can access the crystal network, we can overload their equipment from the inside. The plan was desperate and brilliant in equal measure. Marcus Chen, now aboard the Remembrance as the fleet's chief engineer, worked with Zilani technicians to access the quantum crystal network. It required precise timing and perfect coordination between human technology and Zilani mysticism. All ships, this is Admiral Cross. On my mark, focus all fire on the primary mining platform. We need to create a feedback loop through the crystal network.